Good day. This is your Q&A Social Security Disability Today. I'm attorney Anthony Reeves, your host, and as always, let's get to your questions. Why do disability judges have a problem with unemployment benefits? Okay. I tell people all the time that the goal of Social Security, when you're going to the government to apply for Social Security, you're telling Social Security that you cannot work. I can't make it any plainer than that. You're telling the federal government that you cannot work. Unemployment benefits are a state program, and you're telling the state government that you can work. So guess what happens? See the conflict? On one hand, you're telling one government official that you can't work, and on the other one, you're telling them that you can. Which one is the truth? Now, bear in mind, there's nothing in the regulations that says you cannot apply for both. And I've seen some situations where the person applied for unemployment because they thought they could go back to work, and unfortunately their physical condition or mental conditions prevented them, and then they applied for Social Security. And I've seen some judges kind of let that go. And the reality is, under the regulations, what judges primarily are responsible for is looking at whether you're disabled. They're not really supposed to look at that independently and say, well, you got that, this should keep you from this, because that's not what they're supposed to do. However, they can look at it as a factor relating to your credibility. Because think about it in its totality. And this is where it gets tough, because it's a tough economy. Most people, you need money. So sometimes people do something a little bit on the shady side so that in order they can keep their lights on and food in their house, things of that nature. But it's a troubling thing that some judges have, and not all of them are like this, and just keep that in the back of your mind. But some judges have a tough time resolving the fact that you can go and apply to the state government. And I've seen people do this after the fact, which never works out well. You can go to the state government and tell the state government that you're ready, willing, and able, because they ask you under oath. And think about this for a second, but pause for a second. When you apply for state unemployment, you're telling the state under oath that you could do a job if you got one. Then you come to the federal government and you apply, and the same things under the penalty of law, under the penalty of perjury, you say the same thing, that under oath you cannot work. So you've basically told the government, the state government that you can work, the federal government that you can't work. You told them both under oath. So who are you telling the truth to? Which means that invariably the other is a lie. Now, I don't want to oversimplify that, because there's always circumstances involved in situations, and that's why it's always good to have somebody, a representative, who can kind of help guide you through this. But the reason why some judges, and I do not want to generalize and say that all judges do, but the reason why some judges have a problem is because inherently those two programs are in conflict with each other. So it's tough for you to come here and say, at all times I'm disabled, but then there was a significant, remember, because you're usually 2 or 3 years in. If you're one of those persons who had the benefit of the government extending unemployment, you're basically saying, let's say that you said you were disabled January 1, 2012, and you've been getting unemployment benefits since January 1, 2012, and then you go to it before a judge in June of 2013, and you're still getting unemployment. So the entire time that you said you were disabled is also the entire time you said you were getting unemployment and you could work. See how those two don't necessarily vibe together? And now, before you start screaming about, how am I supposed to survive? I ain't got any money. The question is, why do some judges have a problem with the two? That's why. Because the two programs don't go with each other. I know you got to do what you got to do. So do judges. And those programs are inherently in conflict. And as long as they're in conflict, you're going to have some judges who are going to have some problems with that. Again, I want to thank you for joining me for another edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today. I am your host, Attorney Anthony Reeves. Look forward to your questions. Have a good one.